Howe, Director of Interdisciplinary Arts Programs at Stanford, and host of Art and, where we explore how artists and researchers are shaping new ways of seeing the world. Today, I'm joined by Char McCurdy and Aaron Straight, two Stanford collaborators who are bringing together design, sustainability, biology, and hands-on making in a new way. Char is a designer and lecturer at Stanford D School, where she teaches and researches at the intersection of climate change, futures, and materials. Aaron is a professor of biochemistry whose lab studies cells, chromosomes, and living systems. They first connected through the Arts Catalyst Fellowship, a program that helps faculty develop new methods for integrating art into research and teaching. What started as a conversation about furniture has grown into a new IntroSem called the Giving Tree, which they will teach this fall. The idea is simple and a little wild. Students start with a tree from Stanford's campus, and they spend the quarter seeing what they can make from as much of that tree as possible. Wood, bark, fibers, leaves, cellular structures, and all. In this conversation, we talk about building a class together across disciplines, learning through failure and uncertainty, and how a single tree can invite bigger questions about sustainability, biodiversity, and the future of materials. Here's our conversation with Char and Aaron. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and talk about this exciting class that you're developing. I was super excited when you told me about it initially. It sounds really interesting and a little crazy. So I figured it'd be fun to have you on the podcast to talk a little bit more and hear about the process. I'd like to hear from both of you a little bit about your work and kind of where you're coming from in approaching this collaboration.
Sure. So I'm Char McCurdy. I'm over in the D School. Been at Stanford a little over 2 years, and I'm a designer who often works with biogenic materials, and I'm interested in how we sort of collectively, culturally hold on to ideas around sustainability and the ways in which the things we touch and interact with every day sort of can shape and inform that, and how design as a way of asking questions can collaborate and be complementary with scientific and engineering approaches to ask questions that will help us get to better states around climate change in particular.
Cool. So I'm by training a cell biologist and geneticist, I guess, biochemist, and my work day to day really involves understanding the inner workings of cells from a wide variety of different organisms, everything from yeast to frogs to people. I take a lot of inspiration from biology. And I think, part of why I'm excited about working with Char is I also have a pretty deep commitment to sustainability and, environmental issues. And I view biology as a lens through which you can examine a lot of different fun problems. What I'm excited about, I think, in this operation is how we can come together in new and interesting ways. And it's always fun to try to experiment here at Stanford with new ideas and new approaches and new collaborations. And so that's probably a good initial framework to get us going.
And at Stanford, I know there's a more and more interdisciplinary practice happening, but a lot of times we're also very siloed in our own programs and departments. So how did the two of you first connect?
So the Arts Catalyst Fellowship.
Yes.
Which was such an exciting opportunity. I think at the first meeting, we just sat next to each other by chance and started talking about furniture.
Yeah. And I was like, who is this cool person? And it's funny because, I was there just as an advisor, right? I wasn't an Arts Catalyst fellow, but wow, it turned out to be a much more impactful operation than I could have possibly imagined. And I think it certainly started this, co-conspiracy.
So the Arts Catalyst Fellowship is a new program hosted by Stanford Arts Institute, just to give people a little context. And it was an opportunity for faculty members to come together, faculty members who want to weave art into their practice or develop new coursework. Is that right? You sat next to each other and you started talking about furniture. And then how did that shift into like an idea to actually work together?
I'm trying to recreate all the. I think we started talking, maybe it was then, about the chair class. I can't remember when that first came up. Because as a side gig, I do a lot of woodworking and I like building furniture and doing things like that. And, I hadn't, it sounds ridiculous, but I never really interacted with somebody who actually knows and does design as a profession. And so I think Char and I hit it off just because we had a lot to talk about and learn from each other. And maybe you can remember and recreate the details of that original conversation, Char. It's hard for me to remember when we've had what discussions and how.
Yeah, I think there was a synchronicity around. So I joined the Arts Catalyst Fellowship because I was in early stages of trying to think about proposing an IntroSem that I knew needed to be about making. Like hands-on making is so important to how I think about design, how I think about teaching design, the kinds of learning, the way like synapses get reconnected through like sort of tactile experiences. It's also actually how I think about helping students get a sense of agency to like make things in the world. Sort of very exploratory, thinking about making and learning about sort of the resources and history of making here on campus. And I think in parallel, Aaron, you were sort of asking the question, like the chair class, which maybe also needs some context, was offered by the PRL. And there was so much value there. There was so much student interest and so many stories of like transformative experiences in that class. And then to have that class not be offered, I think that's where you were coming in, Aaron. Like what?
Yeah, I think
what can happen there?
Yeah, it's so cool what you just said, which is, I think it's a good example of why we like to work together. That idea that working with your hands is totally transformative and it makes different connections than, say, sitting and reading or studying or, doing this. There's something about how that transforms your experience that I think is really special. And, that's why Char and I think we can riff off these kind of ideas really easily because it's, I think we both feel pretty passionate about it. And, how to bring that as an educational experience to students is a really cool thing. And, let's give some context. I'm a biochemistry professor in the School of Medicine. Well, I have no business teaching an IntroSem, but I think it's great. And so, I mean that jokingly, but
I think that's not true.
But it's, that's not something that was on my faculty bingo card when I started here.
I think one thing that jumped out to me really early on in talking with you, Aaron, was I think there was a sense that some of the fundamental sort of mindsets or orientations towards research and knowledge production, there was something aligned between like the students you guide and the students I guide, and the sense that like we could create a class where some of the learning outcomes, some of the sort of internal transformations would be valuable in creating this is creating is such a strong word, but like helping students build skills that would be super relevant for operating at really high levels in both of these disciplines in terms of like a curiosity, a determination, like a willingness to take risks, like that. These are sort of shared between our two disciplines, and like a Venn diagram of a circle in some ways of like some of the slightly not softer, but like more intangible skills that really make the difference in someone contributing to both fields.
Okay, so I think we need to tell people, what is this class? Give us the elevator pitch. We'll get into the details later, but like, what is the class?
I think I'm going to let Char describe it because I think it's her brilliance that really sort of got the seed of this thing going.
Super short elevator pitch. So class is called The Giving Tree. And the ambitious vision of the class is day one, we go with Stanford arborist into the forest on campus. We have like 16 freshmen with us. And we chop down a tree that's been slotted to be chopped down. And then by the end of the quarter, we've made as much as possible with as much as possible of the one tree. That's a class. Like, and in terms of what Aaron just said about like bringing you into unfamiliarity, the ambiguity, we don't know yet how the students are going to solve that challenge. Like the action, the task of engaging with that, that's where the learning is. Like we don't expect to get like a beautiful series of like chairs and handmade papers and like the unfamiliarity, the like heading into the fog of a problem. Like that's where the substantive hard work is. And they're going to invent techniques and they're going to push us, and it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I love the fact that, it's sort of, we are not constraining their parameter space. If you go out on day one of a class out into the woods and you chop down a tree, that already says it's a little bit of a different class than maybe, Chemistry 101. And so, I think it's as much of an exploration for Char and me as it is for the students.
First of all, I want to be a freshman. Can I audit this class?
We get that a lot from grad students, from current students. There's already an entourage
on multiple levels.
Yeah, we have a lot of tree adjacent people already who are just. It's actually great.
I just want to observe.
It's excited because it means there is enthusiasm just even when we describe the idea.
Yeah,
well, and I think that also speaks to the appetite for hands-on work of doing something that is not made of glass and textureless.
Yeah.
And everyone going into the unknown together and everyone bringing their own skills and perspectives into it, including both of you. But I think it's interesting to think about, you said you don't even know what's going to happen. You don't know what they're going to want to make. But how do you balance how much you guide them and how much they're figuring out on their own?
That's a great question. I think it's about presenting opportunities and and Sharp pointed out this to me really nicely the other day. We were over in the PRL together. She said, if you show them how to do something, then everybody's going to do it that way. But if you let them figure out how to do it, then that's a bigger space to explore. And so I think maybe one way to think about it is how do we enable the students to really explore? And I don't know, Char, how would you answer that question?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think so. I also teach a biomaterials-based class called Redress Biomaterials: The Future of Fashion, and so I've sort of been calibrating this question of how do you set the stage for productive failure, right? And that also I think maybe has is an overlap in mindset and processes to understand that. Failure is more information. It is a viable outcome of research in both these disciplines. It is not wasted effort at all. But also it's a daunting experience. And if you have students who are coming from a huge range of backgrounds and comfort zones, in my fashion class, I've had students who aren't that confident threading a needle. So this class is projected for spring 27. So there's almost a year now. A year from now, we will have chopped down a tree and we will be up to our elbows in sawdust and trying to get as few splinters as possible. But yeah, so sort of scoping out what's feasible and then also building the relationships that can help us help the students grab onto their crazy ideas.
Can I pick up on that thread that you just started, which I think is such an important one, and that's this idea of learning through both struggle and failure, and then coming out of that with really sort of a new perspective. I've had a related conversation over the past few weeks that has been centered more around AI on campus and education, but AI doesn't know how to struggle and fail and learn from that, right? In the sense that it's a really unique experience to try to do something extremely difficult and then have it tough time doing it and maybe not even succeeding. But then the only option is to try again and try something different. And I think that's a really cool place to explore. And so, yeah, exactly what Char said, that's part of the nature of this course. And, trying to figure out how we let the students kind of go through that process will be really fun.
I'm wondering, Char, how approaching design with biological materials is just a really unique way of doing things. I think, you don't think about design with using living things very often. How, what is your approach?
Yeah. So my starting point is very much climate change and carbon, and biological. You and I, we're carbon-based life, right? That the relationship between living systems and the carbon cycle really fascinates me, and also is not particularly intuitive to people. Like the relationship between energy, gas, and matter. And that feels like a fruitful place for exploration. Trees and forest products are super exciting because in terms of the volume of biomass, the thousands of years of traditions of working with it, there's a lot of really interesting work happening in the design space, the architecture space around reconsidering, rethinking wood as a material that can help us get to carbon negative sort of things, and therefore can help with sort of the embodied carbon in stuff. And one thing that's come up in this process is we found that really excitingly that LBRE on campus is already in sort of half a year into a project of keeping wood that is felled on campus for the built environment here. There's a construction project around the student core, if that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So in 2027, the construction will start, and several years after that, the plan is to have all this incredible outdoor furniture that's made from trees felled here. And so, back to the sort of the excitement, the serendipity, there's momentum here that's really exciting. But in the neighborhood, if trees are being felled, they can be donated to Stanford because otherwise they're being thrown out. And from trees, beautiful, incredible material. And that's, from a carbon emissions perspective, one of the worst things that we can do. Mulch is a terrible methane emitter, stuff like that. So exploring through cellulose and lignin, it's just really super exciting.
I mean, it just seems like your interests and skills are so complementary. But I'm wondering if your different approaches, if there's been any tension, are there, because you're coming from these kind of different worlds, as you've been working together, has there been anything that has not aligned?
There's one comical thing which I just totally love, and part of it is just my ignorance. But Char started using all these words that I had never heard before. I'm like, what does that mean? And so we sat down and we decided, okay, one thing we're going to need for this course is a glossary, because there were terms that were totally alien to me. And I remember I was having one conversation where we were like, whoa, what is that? What are you talking about? And so I think we are coming from very different places. But I don't think, I don't know, you tell me, Char, but I don't sense any tension, but it's just sort of this wow, we're both walking into alien realms, and how do you navigate this weird new space?
Yeah, I think tension's probably not right, but partly that's because Aaron's so great and kind and playful and willing to. When I came to a meeting being like, here's a here's a digital sticky board where we can like think about different elements of the class. I remember you being like, oh, this is not how we put together classes in the med school, but let's go. Like, so I really appreciate how game you've been to meet me where I am. And I hope can do the same and I'm excited to teach a class not for a letter grade. That's new for me. That I think is the right mindset.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember, Char, at one point we were having one of our meetings and introduced me to this concept of, and I'll screw it up, but it's basically this double diamond in design where you start with an idea and you expand it, and then you come back to the original and you expand it. I was like, wow, that's a cool idea. I've never even heard of that before, and yet it's probably something that's very common, in the design world. There's no fear of adventure. I think in our relationship. And so that's been really fun.
And help students understand that they can bring both their scientific knowledge and their creativity to the table in in all the things that they do. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to keep those separate.
And not just that they can, that like both of those parts are going to be essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see what students end up enrolling in this course. Whether they're science students or design students or, comp lit students, I have no idea.
In a collaboration like this, I think you two also make a lot of sense because Char has a background in science and Aaron has a creative practice in woodworking. Like, how important do you think it is to do this kind of work for both people to really have a decent understanding of the other person's realm?
I think if I had to get on a soapbox and theorize collaboration, I would say prior understanding is definitely not required. I think respect absolutely is. And I think that prior understanding of like the other side of the table, the tug of war, like, no, it's not a conflict, but that understanding grows through projects, right? Like, and so like you start somewhere. So basically I counsel students and students who really identify as designers all the time, but are really passionate about this space. And they're like, I don't know how to begin. I feel like I don't have the scientific background. There's like this insecurity about being a bad scientist when they're coming from design. It's like, it's constantly like, no, like be your designer self. You'll learn through projects and through collaborations, but don't be a bad scientist. Be a great designer. And like, that's what you can bring. And I think things can get muddy in collaborations where like, those roles aren't clear, or people feel like they have to pretend to be one or the other. Like being confident that what you bring has a complementary and not a competitive value. I think that can set you up. But yeah, I'd say sort of being interdisciplinary in my individual self. I don't see, and that helps me be interdisciplinary across to people who have much greater depth on the science side than I do or than I aspire to. I think that grows the more stuff you do. It's not a prerequisite.
That actually is a nice way to think about it, in that I think being non-judgmental and just being open to learning, right? I will never be an expert designer, full stop. And that's great. But wow, will I try to learn from Char, as much as I can while we, start this project, which I hope continues for, many more iterations.
So there's a question sort of in this is like, why is this not just a collaboration at the research and practice scale, but why is it also including students? Like, why is pedagogy part of this? And I think there's a couple of reasons that have already surfaced, right? Like that glossary sense of we're hoping to give a gift to a group of young people, right? And it's like, how do we not get lost in our own weeds, like as we learn, how do we make sure we're also like keeping track of that in a way that other people can learn from it? But I think there's also something that's quite permissive in teaching about like modeling curiosity and being able to like be like embrace what you don't know as a way to like help give permission to these young people to also not know and to not like see that as a weakness. So I think that I like the structure. So it's not just about making furniture for the core, right? That there's something about having students be part of the project that I think can help create certain kinds of integrity, certain kinds of humility, certain kinds of curiosity that I like. No pressure, hypothetical future students.
In thinking about structure and pedagogy, what is the class actually going to look like?
Well, there's something exciting about, we have a lot of autonomy, right? But because we're dealing with real materials coming from nature, there's structure and constraint that comes from that. So like when you cut down a tree, it's green wood. It still has a ton of water content, which limits some of the things you can do with it. So like part of what we're working on right now is like kiln drying on campus, right? So the time scale that the kind of, it's not totally up to us, which is part of what's exciting. Like it's a self-exemplifying feature of this class that like the class also has to be designed in relationship to the tree, not just what the students make with the tree.
The material kind of constrains how you approach the class, right? And I love the fact this is a good example of just how crazy this class is. Char and I have been trying to figure out how we can help get this kiln from Berkeley to Stanford, find space for it so that we can cut down a tree, kiln dry it for the first part of the class, and then bring the students back to start using some of that material, and maybe we'll process the bark independently and leaves and God knows what else. So this is, I think it's the structure of the class is in some ways dictated by the nature of the beast that we're working with.
Mechanically, like we're gonna be in the PRL, we're gonna be in the D school, we're gonna be in some labs. Like it's gonna be a mobile, rooted, both and kind of class.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see what happens, and we're gonna have to check in with you again afterwards to see what happened. So what do you hope that students walk away with after they take this class?
I hope for at least two things. One is a sort of like kaleidoscope brain explosion of like seeing what's around them and being like, what is that made of? Wait, why does this bend this way? Like, what is going on? At what's like, and this is, I think, an easy goal to achieve. I think that you spend any amount of time hands-on with stuff, you start to get this sensitivity to like what things are made of, and why things behave the way they behave. And the second thing I hope they take away is sort of an obsession with making. Like, and that I think is a bug that can get into your bark and leave interesting little patterns in your wood.
One, I think that there's a certain empowerment that can come from taking a material and making something of it yourself. And so if they can get that, sort of overcoming any fear they might have of approaching that kind of a problem, that would be fantastic. The other is I hope they have fun, because, like I was teaching a woodworking class just on Monday night, and it was the first time any students had used the lathe. And by the end of it, they were all like, oh my God, that was so fun. And so that's what you want. You want both that empowerment, but also a little bit of joy to come out of the experience. And, if we can combine that and what Char just said, then we've got a successful course, I think.
What feels unique about being able to do this kind of work at Stanford?
Yeah,
I don't know anywhere else this could happen.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how you cook up something like this that's quite as far off the norm, and yet have it be supported.
Yeah.
It's not as though anybody said, "Oh no, you can't do that," or "You shouldn't do that." People were like, "Cool, do that."
How do you think the class might be able to change the way we think about materials or the natural world? Like how do you tie the work, the daily interaction with the bigger picture of climate change?
I mean, I've already in sort of some of the exploratory preliminary conversations, like the speed at which a conversation around this runs up to questions of policy, like the role that bioenergy around wood can play structurally in California, for instance. And this is sort of another piece of like the way I think design can work in the world, is that I'm interested in like public demand for various technologies and the ways in which design can sort of intervene in desire. Like that's the business that design has been in. So I could like totally imagine that a class like this, the students that come out of it, but also the conversation that we can build around working with trees on campus could feed into like broader conversations about like what role forests in California can play in sort of bioeconomy strategies, energy strategies here, and help shape policy in a participatory way.
Yeah, that well put. I think something that I think about a lot is just biodiversity decline. As species continuously are going extinct thanks to human activity. And I think getting people outside of their offices and interacting with, living material, it helps to realize just sort of how extraordinary the diversity is. And I think an appreciation for that, and also an appreciation for just the magnitude of what we're losing, is really important. And so that comes back to that policy piece in the sense that it's easy to put these things off because they seem so distant, but they're coming at us like a freight train. And so, I don't think we're going to have any challenges bringing in the concepts of, environmental change, sustainability, the importance of policy and of action. I think that, to me, that's going to emerge naturally in this class.
What advice would you give to other people who are interested in building across disciplines? And, how would you encourage them to do more of this kind of work? Why do you think it's important?
I mean, I would say find really cool people that you like to work with. That's a good start.
It's fun.
Because then it's fun. Actually, that's exactly right. And that's a great way to start. Yeah, go meet people that you wouldn't normally meet, however you manage to do that.
Yeah, I get this question sometimes from colleagues in the D school who are like, I feel like you're always at events that I've never heard are happening. Like, how, what? And I give this advice to students too, like, go to things where people are gathering that you don't know why. If you don't go in with like a plan of like what it is you're going to get out of the thing. Like, I think there's so much pressure, I feel at least, to like optimize my life and like make the best use of my time and only go to things that are going to, and like sometimes that commitment to being exploratory with my own time is like how I can be in the right place at the right time to, like, what's that sort of saying about like increasing your surface area for luck?
Yeah, and actually, being open to letting new people into your realm, right? Often we can get so siloed, and you just open up, those happy collisions start to happen, I think.
I probably need to come back to this question again after next spring. But so far, has the collaboration changed how you see your own work?
There are all these new things that now I'm exposed to that they just were not even things that were on my radar that I thought about. And, design has always been sort of an abstract concept to me. I know it's important and I'd like to be able to do it, but I don't really think about it day to day. And then, starting to really appreciate like the depth of thought and the complexities and how to, bring that to some of my own problems, whether it's, trying to do an experiment on a cell or something. It's just a cool way and a different way of approaching problems. And I think that's already, I'll let Char speak to it, but it's hard not to kind of get influenced and contaminated by all these new exciting ideas.
The set of metaphors that open up, I would say definitely there's like a whole new, so in the work I've been doing around biomaterials, there's like a sort of very explored space of like chemistry on dead things, like extracted molecules to make useful novel biomaterials. And then there's a set of work that I've done around like bioengineering and like modifying the organism in the first place. And the thinking that's already been emerging from this project, like the whole space of like the cultivation and the growth and the live phase of the organism as like a site that is significant for the ways in which humans then can use materials and therefore the ways in which that will impact climate change. Like that's such an exciting new space that's like there's so much there. And it's sort of one of those retrospective things like the history of humans interacting with organisms is in the growing and cultivation of things, like the sort of the domestication and but that's a site for investigation as a designer, like that's a sort of a new sort of frontier field, forest to walk into for me.
That's all my questions, and it's been really great to talk to both of you.
Thanks for giving us the chance to go through it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellen. It's been super fun.
Subscribe to Art And wherever you listen for future episodes, and follow Stanford Arts on social media for more updates. From Stanford Arts, this is Art And. L&O is our host. The show is produced and edited by me, Taylor Jones, with additional support by Eddie Dye. Chase Everett is our sound designer and our mixing engineer. Our theme song and music is composed by Juana Izus Kiza. Series artwork is by Connie Ko. Executive producers are Ann Shulock and Ellen O. Special thanks to Deborah Cullinan, Stanford Vice President for the Arts, and Stanford Live. Art And is recorded at Bing Concert Hall.